Ixchel the sage. We're accustomed to looking at very different images of Ixchel. This one, when I first saw it, it really struck me as a painting. I happen to hand color this with colored pencils. But this was on a wall painting at Tulum, one of the ancient Maya sites in Yucatan, Mexico. And when I first saw this image of the goddess holding the sun god in one hand and the rain god in the other hand and dancing with them, to me, it just looked like so much gentle power that at this phase of life, after her childbearing years, she has tremendous amount of control over earthly forces, which I think in our individual lives, we can have as well. But this one really struck me as an image of feminine power in a person who is not too young and is not yet old. So this is my image of Ixchel, the sage. The word sage comes from Latin sapere, to know, to be the container of wisdom. Sappho was one of the ancient poets from Greece, but sapere is from Latin, and it simply means to know, much like the Maya word hemen, she or he who knows. Next. So this is the image that we are very accustomed to seeing, our maiden, the mother, and the elder. I'm not sure how many of you have been with us for how long, but I'll just go briefly over these. These numbers signify what I think is their ages. This gal is probably somewhere from 16 to 20 years old. She is the maiden. She wears the snake on her forehead as a symbol of medicine, as a symbol of knowledge, and a symbol of transformation. As the snake sheds its skin, so in early years, a woman goes from childhood to early womanhood right about this age of 16. Also at the onset of menstruation, that also is a major stage of transformation in her life. She wears jade beads. This is actually a skirt made of jade beads. One of her names was Jade Skirt. She has jade anklets on, and she's sitting in front of a backstrap loom. The jade was indicative of her high status within the pantheon of Maya gods and goddesses. She was so much more than a goddess in charge of a certain aspect of human life. She was actually the creator goddess along with her male partner, Itzamna. And once I learned that the Maya viewed the creator as a man and a woman, it meant everything to me. That at that moment I said, I'm all in. I've got to find out more about this goddess in particular and how incredibly logical and wise it was of the ancient Maya to recognize and to share that the creator has to be the masculine and the feminine. Otherwise, there can be no creation as we know it. So she was the Maya creatrix, along with her male counterpart. So the backstrap loom, because she was the patroness of all weavers. And of course, weaving was one of the major crafts of a woman's life throughout her entire life, not just her early years, because all the garments that were worn in the household were woven by the women, and mostly the young women did that. I imagine because it probably was hard on your back. Now, as the goddess of weaving, she daily, as the sun rises, she begins to weave the world as we know it. She not only weaves the fabrics, but the goddess weaves the fabrics of the world as it is known to us. Now, I changed this image, and I'm something that I've never, ever been happy with. I totally regret it because it was so wide, it wouldn't fit on any of our design logos. So I took this out. I took the loom and the pole out, and I put a lotus blossom in her hand. And that is the image that has spread across the world. But I think it was a naughty thing to do, and I apologize to our goddess. This is the mother. Here you see her sitting in the crescent moon because, of course, our moon cycles that control fertility, and there the symbol of fertility is Ixchel holding the bunny. She has a ring in her nose to signify that she is a married woman. So she's sitting in the crescent moon because her fertile life depends on the moon phases. She is the goddess of the moon. She is the goddess of cycles, the moon, all waters of the earth. She is the goddess of birth, fertility. She is the goddess of death. As the goddess of death, she is called the keeper of the bones. She is the goddess of knowledge, wisdom, scholarship, and writing. Incredible large portfolio as the creator goddess. Here is her jade skirt, clearly seen, little jade beads that make up her skirt. Now you see the young goddess has the snake. The elder goddess has the snake. The mother does not. She holds a bunny. I've thought about that for a long time, wondering why does the mother not carry the snake of learning transformation? Well, what the Maya women told me is the snake represents medicine and healing to them. And the young girl is learning, the older gal is teaching, the mother, she no got time. She no got time because she's probably raising 9, 10, or 12 children, which in this modern day with Maya families is still the norm. And in ancient days, that would have been, again, normal, 9 to 12 children to raise. However, all during that mothering time of, let's say, from probably 16 all the way up to the age of 50, she is applying what she learned from her grandmother in her youth and gaining her own skills and her own modes of application. So I figure she's somewhere from 20 to 35. The grandmother here, she wears the snake of transformation because this is a time of great transformation for a woman. We have passed through menopause. We have passed through our childbearing years. Sometimes we have even passed through our marriage years if our partners are deceased. So it is a time of renewal. It's a time of great shifting of feminine realities. She's loaded up with jade. All these goddesses carry a lot of jade, again, to signify that she was the creatrix. You could not wear jade in ancient Maya days unless you were a priest, a priestess, or images of gods and goddesses. That was strictly reserved for the highest of society, the gods, goddesses, and the royalty. So here she has a clay pot in her hands, which very much looks like a womb and a uterus. You could even say those are the ovaries. And in many of her glyphs, you see water pouring out of this freely to signify the waters of birth, to signify the rain. One of her consorts was Chak, the rain god, as we saw her dancing with the rain god earlier, and to signify the free, unimpeded flow of menstrual blood as well. She's an older woman here, as you can see from her face and her posture. But now this is what has always intrigued me. 20 to 35 is this lady, the mother in those mothering, birthing years. From 35 to 65, wow, 30 complete years. What is missing in here? I've always thought that she is much more than the tripartite goddess. She is the quadripartite
Right, just
goddess.
found a whole bunch of these. double sheets,
Somebody put your mute on, please.
kings, all brand new in this tub that was on top.
All right, am I still on? You can hear me, all right. So yeah, so what is this stage between 35 and 65? And as I think about it, we used to call her the queen. That never set perfectly for me. I believe that she is this phase of the goddess, the sage, the one who knows. If you're dancing with the rain god and the sun god, that definitely signifies a lot of deep internal power and wisdom. So to me, the sage at this phase of her life is a woman who has developed a craft. She might be a potter. In ancient days, she might be one of the most expert weavers of her community. In our day and age, she could be a weaver. She could be a potter. She could be a seamstress, and her craft could be motherhood. Sometimes she has mastered an instrument. She plays in one of the top orchestras because she's been playing throughout her life. She's run a household, and as we know as mothers, that is a great feat to have run and managed a household, gotten your children up in the morning, got their shoes, their clean clothes on, given them breakfast, make their lunch, give them their school bags, and prepare for when they come home as well. So to have managed a household for 25 or 30 years is to me a tremendous feat that should be celebrated. Of course, she raised children, and there again brought in a lot of joys, a lot of sorrows, a lot of triumphs, and a lot of disappointments. She may have commanded troops, perhaps in ancient days as well as in modern times. Now, our military forces now have many women who are at that level of commanders. She has perhaps led a political party. She might by now have run for president of her nation. She certainly has managed a business. And if she hasn't yet gotten there, as soon as those kids are out of the house, she is going to be able to do that and really looking forward to it, rubbing her hands together like, yes, I'm ready, I can do this. She may be a scholar. She may be an author. People may defer to her as an expert on some subject because of the life that she lived, how she was always curious, and how she always kept her eye on the ball. She may be a scientist, the female scientist who discovered the cure for malaria in an ancient text of China was a sage in her 50s. She received a great prize for the Nobel Peace Prize for medicine for having discovered artemisinin from the Artemisia plant, which was wild in China thousands of years ago and is right now growing outside my door. And she's probably has been a strategist, run a large company, commanded those troops with great strategy. Even a household requires tremendous strategy. I always thought if we put women in charge of nations, we would run it like a household. We would have it organized very quickly. Whatever she has done, it was a learning ground for higher wisdom. I think that is really important. She may not have succeeded with every one of those endeavors, but every single endeavor, whether it was a success or a failure, if we can use that word, she was able to learn something and know that she learned something. At this phase, the sage is her most authentic, unique self. There is nobody else like her in the world. She can be a powerful agent for change. So I think it's important at this point to say that what I'm going to talk about is actually quite an ideal of the sage woman. I also want to acknowledge and to recognize that not every woman without health, resources, and a community foundation is going to be able to achieve this status. But every woman has the capacity to achieve the status of the sage if she has health, resources, and community. So here is our sage, that woman from 35 to 65. So here is a Maya glyph of Ixchel at this phase. And what do we see here? Here is a postmenopausal woman. Look at her breasts. I absolutely adore the way this Maya painter painted this woman on a cup. This is a rollout of a cup. We see a large-breasted woman. Many of us in menopause have gone from small breasts to large breasts. I'm one. It's quite something to get used to. You have a whole entire big couple of baggage things on your front chest that you're not accustomed to. And you see her girth is more than it was when she was a young gal. And look at her bunny. Her bunny is running away. She's not young, she's not old, but it's pure gold. So this is Ixchel, and there is the symbol of the moon. That is a crescent moon that we saw the mother sitting in. And now this is the mother in her menopausal approaching years, when fertility begins to wane and the bunny runs away. And sometimes we are willing to say goodbye, and for some of us, it may be a difficult transition, especially if childbirth years came late in life. But I think the success at this time in our life is to accept these changes. It's a really important aspect. So her bunny runs away, and we're just going to enlarge this a little bit. There's her big bunny, and you see how much of her portrait, this big bunny, it almost looks like a tall human being, takes up. And this little scroll here, these are known as words of wisdom that are coming out of Ixchel. And there's her moon right there, her beautiful half moon, all of her jade, same jade necklace and her jade bracelet. And she is basically saying goodbye to the bunny, saying goodbye to her years of fertility. So my quest today is, now what happens? What happens then after that? After the bunny runs away, what happens? So this is another modern image I thought deserved its own little plate in this discussion. You see how large the snake is? Here the snake plays the role of transformation again. Here we are in this stage, 35 to 65, maybe 50 to 70. We're finished with our reproductive years. We're in the menopausal years and then the post-menopausal years. My feeling is that the sage is in the post-menopausal years, somewhere from 55 to 70, somewhere in there. And at that phase of life, when menstruation has ceased and all of the things that we have to adjust to and stop during the menstrual days, the childbearing years are over. We no longer have the wonder, did we get pregnant this month? Are we pregnant this month? What will we do if we are pregnant? What will we do if we're not pregnant? All of those cares and tribulations are now in the past. Our children are mostly grown, sometimes out of the house. Although again, I have to acknowledge that some women have their children as late into their late 40s. So in their mid 50s, they still have children in primary school. So across the board, as modern life has changed for all women, this also has been shifting. Yet more or less within generalization, I think that postmenopausal 55 to 75, 20 years can be maximum production, maximum self-realization for a woman. And so this is an image that was engendered. Eva Sengfelder put the idea of ish-CHEL or another image into AI and asked AI to create this image, which I think is really lovely. And once again, her bunny is facing away from her. In the other image of her as the young mother goddess, she is definitely holding and keeping that bunny close to her breast. This bunny is about to run away. So who was this sage? Who was the Maya woman who could be the modern woman, who is the modern woman at this sage of the age? Number one, she is definitely the wisdom keeper. And what does that mean to be the wisdom keeper? She knows the names of plants that other people have forgotten. I remember being on the rainforest medicine trail with a grandmother, a mother, and a daughter, all in the same family. And we're standing in front of the Mexican wild yam, doing a herb walk for this family. And the Mexican wild yam in Central America is a very well-known plant for rheumatism, arthritis, and heart problems. It's also the plant that gave modern life the birth control pill and cortisone. Two major drugs came out of that plant, and the active principle is cortisol. So the grandmother knew the common name, which is the wild yam or cocomeca. The grandmother knew the wild yam name, and she knew the cocomeca. She knew the uses, the preparations, the stories, and myths. The mother only knew the name. The granddaughter knew nothing. Not the name, none of the uses, didn't even recognize it as a medicinal plant. So at that phase of her life, that grandmother was the keeper of that knowledge. She is the keeper of the prayers. For instance, the prayers that Don Eligio passed on to us are coming through to all of us through me as the wisdom keeper in this case. Our stories often come through me as well because I am the elder, I am the sage. And then we carry the legends, the myths, and the stories, which are so important. There wasn't always television in other days. There is a theory that why we are so intent on staring at a screen is because we used to stare at a fire. And while we stared at the fire in a circle, we told stories, legends, and myths that kept our wisdom alive. So that's why she is the wisdom keeper. She's a leader. In ancient days, the elder Maya women were the teachers of dance. They were the priestess, high priestess, and priestesses of different temples. Certainly, Ixchel's temple was in every major ceremonial site. So she led dances, she taught dancing, and one of the most popular dances was dancing with a snake. It was a non-toxic snake that the women raised and fed and kept in their temples because the snake was a major part of this snake dance that they did in the ceremonial centers at the beginning and end of every major feast. The Spaniards reported a great deal about those very indecent snake dances that they did, passing the snake between their legs and all around their bodies and writhing with the snake. So she was the leader, whether it be dances or scholarly pursuits. She was the vision carrier. By vision carrier, I mean that dreams that guide the community, guide the household, guide the family, often come through our elders. Here, we're so fortunate in Central America that elders are still so honored and respected, and many of them simply are dreamers. They dream and they come to the household in the morning and share the guidance that came in the dream. The most common dreamer, vision keeper, is one who senses when death is occurring. There, just about every household I know has someone, or the village has someone who can dream before death is about to occur. They may not know who it is, but there is a dream vision that announces that a death is about to occur in the family or the community. Many prayers have come through dreams. Much guidance has come through dreams. I remember an elder woman in her 50s, a sage, in Guatemala, where I was teaching a class in pregnancy massage to a group of ex-nuns. These were women who had left the Catholic Church. Many of them had children from priests who also had to leave the Catholic Church. So they formed their own community and they wanted to continue service as healers. So they asked me to come with Miss Hortense and teach them how to do our work in pregnancy. Well, one of these ladies told a fascinating story. She said that her mother and grandmother and aunts were all midwives. And when she was younger, while they were alive, she thought it was all foolishness and nonsense and had no interest at all in becoming a sobadera or massage specialist. But as she became older, she got into her 50s in this postmenopausal phase where you are thinking about a contribution. How can you be of service? She realized then that she would want to become a therapist. She wanted to become a sobadera, but now they're all dead. So she prayed and she told the story of 3 dream visions in 3 nights. The first night, she was invited into a room by a being that looked like an angel, and a lady was laying on a flat bed, and the vision in the dream pointed to her and said, "Come in, come in." And in that dream, they showed her how to do the massage in the first trimester. The second night, the same lady, the same angel motioned her to come in. The lady is now in her second trimester, and she was taught how to do the massage. And the third night, the lady is just about to deliver. She's 38, 40 weeks pregnant, and they showed her how to do the term massage. And I just thought that was absolutely so evident of Ixchel working through a sage. So contact with spirit often comes through our elders. She would have been a priestess, and in modern days, she could still call herself a priestess. In ancient Maya temples of Ixchel, the priestess was the oracle. The oracle in Ixchel's temple in Cozumel Island, there was the bird oracle and the snake oracle. Cozumel used to be called Kuzam-il. Kuzam are swallows. So Kuzam-il, the place where the swallows return. And you've seen how the swallows make magnificent formations in the sky. Well, it was one of the Ixchel priestesses' role to be the oracle to determine what did those patterns signify in the return of the swallows at Ixchel's sanctuary at Cozumel. The snake that was Ixchel's sanctuary was famous throughout the ancient Maya world for the snake oracle, who embodied Ixchel and the snake during her visions when she could answer questions. And that was a very strict lifestyle that they had to lead to be the oracle. She is a guide. She gives advice. Certainly, she can help young women maneuver through their early marriage years, not taking yourself too seriously, learning when to be a disciplinarian, when learning how not to ease up a little bit on discipline in the household. So she's a guide in so many ways, just by benefit of her wisdom and experience. She is a very seasoned healer. Think about Miss Hortense, Miss Juana. These ladies were definitely our own sages, and their primary goal in life was service through healing. That's what turned them on. That's what gave them meaning to their life, and Don Alicio as well. But every healer that I've known is most powerful in that phase of life from 55 to 75. Before that, we know they're too busy taking care of households and children. At that phase, the children are gone, and then some spirit moves into them that opens up the gates and allows them to be their best, most authentic and powerful self as a healer. Many of them become midwives because they realize that the moment of birth sets the stage for the rest of your life, and they want to be there. It is incumbent on them, and they feel it not as a burden, but as a gift to be the guide of civilization. And that first moment of birth is one of the most essential moments when you are welcomed in peace, comfort, and love. So midwifery was something that often, still to this day, elder women take to quite naturally. And the midwives at the Ixchel sanctuary at Cozumel were the primary school of midwifery training. If you were trained as a midwife at Cozumel Island, that was like a PhD from Harvard in your chosen field. The firekeeper, we have our firekeeper in Vivian Menjivar. It is a great honor. And the fire is where we do our offerings, where we give our prayer, and where that's that water, fire, earth, air, fire, water. My goodness, what is it? Fire, air, water, earth. Fire is one of those basic four elements that makes up the fabric of our lives. To be a fire keeper is to be a keeper of a temple and see the fire unto itself as a temple where we give thanks, where we make offerings, where we get light, where we get warmth, and where sunshine in trees is returned back to us in its living form. Mentor, that is the stage of our lives where we have a right to say, you know what, as Don Eligio would say, I've eaten a few beans and I know better. I know this path that you're planning to take is not in your best interest. May I recommend something else for you? Mentor is an important phase. We can guide youngsters. We also are able to guide healers. That's a phase of my life right now. I'm guiding many of you who come to learn the abdominal therapy, who come for the wisdom training, because an elder man shared his life, his stories, his wisdom, his knowledge, his spirit with me. And in this phase of my life, my primary interest is service. And I know that many women who are in that sage phase, we sage as we age. And I know that many of them, like Hortense and like Miss Juana, like many of the other traditional healers I know, primary focus is service. They are circle keepers. In ancient days and today, Maya women were in charge of training dancers, craftspeople. There would have been a circle of potters. There was a circle of dancers. And I recommend highly that if you're not in a women's circle, join one or start one. I started one only a few years ago. And now I have a minimum of 15, maximum of 25 women who come to my home once a month to gather together to talk. We discuss one subject. We call it the Conversation Club. It morphed into the Wise Woman's Club. And we just share our thoughts on a certain topic. That was how I chose to do purpose protection at my women's circle. I know many of you have joined women's circles focused on spirituality. It's the best thing. And as someone said, There is nothing more powerful on the earth today than a circle of women dedicated to a purpose. This is a circle of women dedicated to healing that we are in. And I know that the effect that we have had around the world on thousands of women, young, old, and sages, has been incredibly useful and been incredibly impactful. She's a master crafts woman. Think of the potters, think of the weavers, think of the painters, the people, the architects, all the things that they have developed through their young years. Now they are masters of that craft, and it's time to teach. She could be a scholar, an author, or a scientist, based on the amount of time that she herself put into her own studies. She may have written books by now. I've written 11 books, and every single one feels like the birth of a child. So it is a way, I think, that postmenopausal women are able to maintain the sense of giving birth, of creating, by figuring out what is your forte. Where does your individual, intellectual, or spiritual strength lie? What is it that you could share? What is the egg that you can bring to the world? And when you crack that egg open, what is it are you giving birth to? We all have something in us by the time we reach this age that we can share with others for their benefits, for individual benefits, community benefit, and benefit of all mankind. The grandmother, oh my goodness, the grandmother is such an important stage of life. I so honor every moment with my two grandsons, and to know that I have been able to gently steer them into positive roles and positive outlook on life. And I see it happening now that they're approaching their preteen years. My older grandson is all about planting trees. He was here at Christmas time and he wants a piece of land. 13 years old, he wants me to give him a piece of land to plant trees. And I feel that that is a result of the time that he spent with us on living in a 500-acre reserve, a rainforest reserve, and being here and picking fruits off of our trees. And I just feel so thrilled that I've been able to have some impact on the next generation. That's a kind of a birth, another type of birthing for us. So the grandmother role is extremely essential for the well-being of civilization. We can be the protectress, we can be the mother's guide, we can be the father's friendly ear, we can be the guide, the unconditional love of those children. And nothing more important, I know, than unconditional love. And that is something a grandmother has in spades. We could be the dance and ritual instructor. In the Maya days, there were always elder women who were the dance instructors. And to teach dancing was a part of every ish-CHEL temple. Skill and expertise, oh my, in spades. She has learned so much. She is an archetype, really. At this phase of our lives, this sage is the archetype of wisdom, learning, and personal power. So sageness, what is sageness? And I hope I'm going to go through these. And I think every time I went through this, I thought that I've left so much out. So I want to go through this, and then I want to turn this around and ask you, what do you feel in your heart is indicative of this sage age? The transformation, why the snake is there, because the snake is a symbol of transformation, like shedding the skin, but it's a new skin that emerges and a refreshed snake. So we shed the skin of motherhood, we shed the skin of menstruation, we shed the skin of fertility, and we move into a different phase of mentor, teacher, and guide. Harmony within herself. I find that is so important. And I think the only way to that is the road to harmony within yourself is through deep breath and meditation, deep breathing and meditation. I also think that if you learn something about Carl Jung's shadow, that every human being who was ever alive, who ever walked the face of the earth, has a dark shadow, something about themselves they do not want other people to know or to see. If you can turn around and face that shadow, face that dark side of yourself and face it down, you are in harmony with yourself. You are a realized human being. That was the crux of Carl Jung's career, was to help people come to terms with their shadow. I don't think we can be in harmony with our own beings unless we have been able to face and reconcile what is the shadow within. Everybody has it. We have had joys and sorrows, tremendous joys and tremendous sorrows. And I've always liked the phrase that she who would exalt to the heights must be prepared to sink to the depths. So our joys have been high and our sorrows have been deep. But through all of those, we have learned. We have learned so much. And we know that in the end, everything will be all right. And if it's not all right, it's not the end. So just hold on. The ride's not over yet. Loss and grief, almost every day, loss and grief will show up. And we learn it's like shedding skin. We have lost loved ones. Some of us have lost children. We've lost homes. We've lost careers. But every loss we learn, if we hold to the wisdom, we learn that every loss opens a new door if we just sit silently, breathe, meditate, wait, and have faith. Sovereignty. Now there's a really good word. Sovereignty means to basically be your own boss. You know who you are, what you like, and you lead yourself. You're not looking for a leader, you are looking to be a leader. Sovereignty basically is knowing who you are, what your gifts are, and how you can best use them. We are self-realized through self-acceptance. We must come to terms with accepting our foibles, our weaknesses, the things that make us cry, the things that make us angry, the people who make us sad, the people who make smoke come out of our ears. We stop and think, now why? Why did that upset me so much? It's because, and why did that? And why did that? That's always been a method that I learned many years ago, is sit down, talk to yourself and say, why were you so upset? Well, why was that? And then why was that? And it keeps going back and back until finally you see yourself as a little 4-year-old child in a corner crying because somebody hurt your feelings in the very same way. We now know that self-care is now non-negotiable, absolutely non-negotiable. We must take time to pamper ourselves. It's so important that we find time for a spa day, time for nothing. I always say the hardest thing to get is nothing. Almost impossible to get nothing. But when you have an opportunity to do nothing, to sit with yourself, to contemplate the life that you led, the highs and lows, the joys and the sorrows, and to think what were the lessons and what did that closed door open? Once that door closed, what door was opened after that? And so self-care, obviously, even doing our own self-care massage at this point, I will do my self-care for the rest of my life. I know that it is what I'm talking about, abdominal self-care, in case you don't know. The abdominal self-care that we teach in the Abdominal Therapy Collective, I feel is essential for a long, happy life. I also feel I got a bloody right to say all these things. I'm now 85, still going strong, still making plans, still doing week-long scholarship forays into preparing presentations like this. So I would just say, live according to your purpose and your values. Live according to your purpose and your values. If you know your values and you know what your purpose is at any time of life, but most especially from 55 to 75, 55 at the age of saging, and 75, things are starting to change in a different way. Definitely getting older, definitely getting stiffer. Maybe the eyes don't work as well. I mean, like I said, I'm 85. My pretty much everything still works really well. And I attribute that to my self-care over the years, not just the abdominal therapy, but being careful about my diet, or some of my friends think is neurotic. I really don't give a damn. That's how I am surviving into my older years. I don't give a damn that they find it neurotic or that they find it difficult, that, well, gee, what do we make for Rosita? It's always an issue. So there have been successes and failures. There have been riding, achieving the top of the mountain and sinking down to the depths, because she who would soar to the heights must be prepared to sink to the depths. So the highs and lows of life always bring exciting new dimensions, exciting new ideas, and new realizations. I've always been a person who could set out to get something done and do it unafraid of failure, because I learned long ago that even if I failed, that was a success unto itself. Now I know what not to do. Now I know what doesn't work. I can take that off the plate. So I have never been afraid of failure, and I have failed, even recently. But each one was a lesson, and each one gets easier and easier. And like everybody, we take our failures more serious than our successes. I do that as well. So it's good to be surrounded by people who praise you with sincerity, because we tend to focus more on our failures. So if you have a good girlfriend, and I think one of the greatest secrets of saging years is girlfriend or girlfriends. If you're lucky enough to count them in the plural, hallelujah. But most definitely, we all need a confidant, a girlfriend, someone who can say, wow, you look fabulous in that color. That's very uplifting. And you know, what you said last night really stuck with me. And I just can't thank you enough for giving me that little piece of wisdom. It's so important for our own self-esteem, which, because we're human beings, no matter what age or what phase we're in, always needs a little bit of gas pumping into the tire. So I think a girlfriend is the best source of that. Intuition and spiritual awareness. Don Eligio was a person who really taught me to settle in with confidence to follow your intuition. He told me that whenever a person comes into his clinic, he hears their ailment, he finds out, you know, how long have you had this, all of the things that we would normally ask. And he said, as soon as that's over, what they need pops into my head. The plant that I should give them pops into my head, and I never question it. In the beginning, I know that new students in the abdominal therapy classes question that intuition, or people in the wisdom classes. I had a feeling I should prepare 2 buckets for her, and I just didn't listen. So the more you listen to that intuition, the stronger and louder it becomes. It becomes a megaphone if you listen. If you hear a little whisper in the back of your head and that says, this baby needs chamomile tea, and you say, oh, chamomile couldn't be that simple. I better do a little more research. I better think about this a little more. Well, that intuition, that angelic spirit that is your intuition, takes a step back. The next time you need help, they'll whisper marigold tea. And you say, no, I think I better think about that a little more. Now that intuition angel is 3 or 4 steps behind you until you can't hear the whisper any longer. So follow your intuition. As women, we are gifted with intuition because of our ovaries and our uteri. It is a natural gift bestowed on all of womanhood. Your spirituality is something that only you can know and only you can build and engender. But having a spiritual base in life is, to me, one of the most important foundations of longevity, usefulness, and happiness, because we're not alone in this. And knowing that there is a spiritual guide, someone to fall back on. Once I met Ixchel and incorporated her into my life, it was such a beauty. It's simply a beauty to have a divine being to love and to worship. I call on her. I've been given dream visions as a result of calling on her. I think we have played a major role in keeping her alive in modern life. I just feel that it has been so important that ish-CHEL's name and images are now all over the world. So I just want to briefly go through this. I have about 5 minutes through Cozumel Island. This is the ancient island of Ixchel. This really will give us a sense of what it was like to be a sage in ancient days. This was Ixchel's sanctuary island where women came on these canoe routes. This one would have come from Playa del Carmen or Pole. This one came from Tulum. Others came from Isla Mujeres. Others came from maybe even far south as Nicaragua. They came here on pilgrimage at the time of menarche and menopause, as their menstruation began and as the menstruation ended. It was incumbent to make your pilgrimage. Here they are on a pilgrimage canoe, arriving at the island of Cozumel. Cozumel. Remember, Cozum is the name of the swallows that return to her tower temple every year at the same time. So women would go there and they had to stay a complete moon phase. So you had to stay 28 days on the island to experience the full extent of its blessing. And there were pilgrimage walks that went from shore to the main temple. There was another one, and there were arches that you passed through before you came to this major temple. And as you passed through that arch, it was the transformation of shedding the skin of a snake, becoming a little girl again, becoming a school girl again. You are there to learn. You are there to be humble. You are there to study midwifery, herbology. You are there to study the dances, to learn to work with the snakes, to become a potter. And one of the wonderful aspects of this is that women at any phase of life who felt that they were abused and that their happiness had turned into cinders and it was impossible to kindle that flame again, could leave their home and go to Cozumel and spend the rest of their lives in service to other women and children. Children who were orphaned were brought here by their aunties and their grandmothers to be raised by the priestesses of Ixchel's temple. Because when a child was orphaned, say the mother died in childbirth, often the father would commit suicide because the Maya believed that those who died in childbirth and those who chose the date of their own death went directly to paradise. So to join his wife in paradise, their belief was so great that he would commit suicide to join his wife. Therefore, there was an orphan baby or babies, and the grandmother would carry that baby to Kuzamil because those would be primary targets for sacrifice. So in order to prevent them being given to the gods as sacrificial victims, grandmothers and aunties rushed them across the sea and took them to Kuzamil Island, where they were raised by the women of the island. So if you were a childless woman, a woman with an infertile woman, you could go there because your family would have rejected you. Your husband, your maternal family, and your paternal family would have rejected you. Therefore, you were basically unwanted and homeless. Well, you would go to Cozumel Island, and there you could spend the rest of your days raising orphans. Boys had to leave at the age of 12, and they were sent away to apprenticeships at other places outside the island. So this was Ixchel's island sanctuary for women. It was a university, it was a clinic, it was a hospital, it was a birthing center, it was a dance and ceremony center, and the place of the oracle as well. And surrounded as it is by ocean currents, was very difficult to arrive. These were not just like anybody knew where these currents were. There were only certain lineages of men who could paddle these canoes, know the current, and arrive. If you didn't know the current, your canoe just turned around, and you could never arrive. Somewhat like the mists of Avalon. All right, so I could stay there forever. So how can we honor the sage within? Then I'd like to turn this over. I think embrace your unique perspective. There is only one of you. Only you have learned lessons. Only you have had your sorrows and your joys. And every one of those has been a major life lesson. Meditate on your life cycles, your early years, your menstrual years, the challenges that came along, your losses, your lessons, and your successes. I think that is a great meditative practice to go back, perhaps do the self-care, lay your hands over your pelvis, over your womb, and go into that meditative state, looking back over the decades, looking back over the experiences, thinking about your highs and lows, gains and losses, and what was each lesson. Connect with your own inner wisdom and power. Listen to your intuition. Truly, you have inner wisdom and you have power. You are a woman. You were gifted with that as a given, but yours is unique. There's no one else like your wisdom and your power. Cultivate a spiritual practice. Only you can determine what that is. My personal practice is time with ish-CHEL, keeping my altar, the spiritual baths, teaching the wisdom classes is a powerful source of spiritual practice for me. Honoring our mentors, Don Eligio, burning the copal, energetically cleansing my home, my space, and my body. I have great, great faith in the power of water, plants, and prayer. That's where my spiritual practice lies. Spend time in women's circles. It is paramount that you spend time with other women. It is not just the talking, that's very important, but our energies unite through our ovaries. And when we unite that energy through our ovaries, we are united with grandmothers of the past. And so that wisdom, that intuitive knowing can come through greater when you're in a circle of empowered women and an empowered ovarian, ovarian bliss. It makes everything more apparent to be in that circle. Honor your own stories and wisdom. You have stories. Maybe not everybody had 13 years with the Maya shaman, but you have stories. I know you do. From your childhood, from your teenage years, the things that happened, the things where you thought you'd never get out of it alive. Those are all fascinating stories for the hearth. Be your authentic self. No apologies. I find that people who constantly apologize for their opinions, for their presence, for taking a seat, for being at your table, for being late, for whatever, I have so much compassion for them. And I just feel like saying, it's okay. It's okay. There's no need to apologize. So, sometimes, of course, an apology is absolutely necessary, but let us not apologize for being ourselves. Find your authentic self. And I think if you contemplate and meditate on that concept of the shadow within, you will find your authentic self. Be brave to face the unknown. That is so essential to well-being in the later years, because once we're done with our families and we have that identity, if that was your reality of birthing and raising children, once that skin is shed off of that phase of the snake, then it's a challenge to recreate yourself, but it's also a magnificent experience to be able to recreate yourself at each phase of our lives. I love it personally. So our modern day sages, Pema Chodron, Oprah, Maya Angelou, Malala Yousafzai, Hortense, Miss Juana, Rosemary Gladstar, Pam Montgomery, and Mother Flor de Mayo. Those are all great examples of realized women with sovereignty and service. And there's our very own sage, Miss Hortense, who taught us so much, who loved us so well. Remember her phrase, you could never too humble. You could never too humble. She was the wisest woman I ever knew. And so, be your best, stand tall, be proud, courageous, speak your truth, and work for the good of all. So anyway, I wanted everybody to remember that I wrote 2 novels about Ixchel. One is called The Oracle of Ixchel, and the other one is The Island of Women, The Oracle of Ixchel and The Island of Women. It's a 2-part historical novel about exactly what we have been talking about. And yes, they're on Amazon. Thank you everyone so much for giving me this opportunity, for your heartfelt participation. I felt the love and the warmth of a circle of women, and I'm very grateful to you.